this vibrant speaker that we have today. This is Chuck Beretz. You know that Chuck had previously spoken to our committee, over a year ago about some of his work. He has since moved on. He has co-founded a new company, Cloudforia, and so we're very happy to have him speak to us today about 8 tips that we can all use during this time of adjusting to the new COVID economic fallout. So thank you. Chuck, it's all yours.
Thanks, Teresa. I've never, ever been introduced as vibrant before. So I'm going to tell my wife that I was introduced as vibrant. But thank you for setting that bar. Hi, everybody. So I'm Chuck Beretz. As I mentioned, I'm one of 4 managing partners of Cloudforia. We are a relatively new company, been around just a year and a half. And we are business process experts that specialize on automating the various processes of your companies onto the Salesforce platform. So what I'm going to talk today, I'm going to, and by the way, I would rather be standing in front of you speaking to all of you about this. I prefer to work that way. I prefer to whiteboard. I hate slides. I did prepare a short slide deck today because I wanted to have something to leave behind that I could share with all of you. Hopefully the slides aren't too wordy. I don't like that either. I don't like looking at slides. I don't like making slides. I don't like being slided to death. So hopefully this is just enough information to get across my message, and then I can leave it to you to look at on your own time. So I'm gonna switch my video camera off and share my screen here. All right. Let's see. Give me just a second. There we go. You should see a slide here. Good. Okay, great. So let me take just 30 seconds to dive in a little bit about what we do because it's relevant to today's talk. So as I mentioned, Cloudforia specializes in business process consulting, and technically what that means is that we're kind of a traditional management firm, like a McKinsey, but really for the small and medium business market. But what we do at that point is not stop. We automate those business processes according to best practices, and we focus exclusively on the Salesforce platform. Now, the reason this is important for today is because the title is a little bit misleading. I've decided to focus on 8 actions that we can take now for the COVID-19 economy. I think the COVID-19 economy is probably the post-COVID-19 economy is probably too optimistic of a title. That's why that's parenthetical. But there are hundreds of business processes that can be adjusted for your own business across different industries. So the actual title of today should probably be something more like 8 of the hundreds of business process areas you should focus your attentions on now to thrive in the COVID-19 economy. It doesn't really roll off the tongue, but there are so many different industries here. There are so many different business sizes here. It's hard to distill 8 areas that are applied to all businesses, except where maybe some core business processes are concerned. Regardless of how you sell, every business sells. Regardless of how you market, every business markets. Regardless of how you serve customers or run HR, we all have certain problems in these business process areas. So that's where I've decided to focus the conversation today. This is the disclaimer that this list is by no means exclusive. In brief, who are we? Why is that not showing? There we go. So this is me and my 3 other partners, co-founders. Rob on the left runs our New York practice. Syed, second from the left, runs our San Francisco Bay Area practice. Eunice on the right and myself run Southern California, and we also have an office in London with a local director. We have plans to move into Dubai later this year. So we've been very blessed, very fortunate. Business is good. We are a minority-owned business. Kevin mentioned that earlier as well, and we've had good success in the last few months. So let's just start getting a baseline. I would consider these 4 areas to be characteristics of the post-COVID-19 economy. First of all, customer preferences have absolutely shifted online, and that trend is expected to continue. Where people have shopped in person, where that is now possible or was always possible online, people will now have a strong preference to do that shopping online and minimize that in-person contact. Number 2, in terms of your employees, remote is now not just a nice to have, it's a must have, it's a workplace norm. And that is probably here for a while. That one is not going to go away anytime soon. I'm going to speak to that a little more in depth. Number 3, there's absolutely, as you all feel, there's an uncertain regulatory climate around how businesses reopen and how we engage going forward. The legal liability of businesses around disease transmission or other liability that we have as responsible owners is just not settled. And then finally, there's the science itself. There's uncertainty around how we get to herd immunity, seasonality of transmission, effectiveness of vaccine, effectiveness of public health measures, or even if people are going to adhere to them. So given these characteristics, what are some business processes that you could look at as you go forward so that you can really start to thrive? So let's get the obvious one out of the way. So we have to enable remote work wherever that's possible. Before the COVID-19 crisis, work from home was a perk. Right now, it is fundamental to your operation. Now, we all know that the demand for flexibility in where and how people work has been building for at least 2 decades. Before the crisis, surveys repeatedly showed that 80% of employees want to work from home at least some of the time, and that a third of them would take a pay cut in exchange for that option. So while the experience of working from home during the crisis may not have been ideal, it did give many people for the first time a taste of what that could be. The genie is out of the bottle, and it's not likely to go back in. This map is a study that was just published by the University of Chicago Booth School of Business in April. And what it shows is the density of jobs that can be performed entirely at home. Not just part, but entirely at home. There is significant variation across cities and industries. But what I want to point out is that in our own San Diego County, more than half the jobs in the county can be entirely performed remotely. So this is here to stay. This is a significant change in what employees want. Continuing on this theme, think about what you spend possibly on a commercial lease as a business owner versus the cost of enabling a good remote worker. Now, for people that are running businesses or been involved in remote work or work from home, you're always getting a laptop shipped to you, maybe some other equipment, maybe something to connect over the cellular network. But now you might see that shift. I mean, if you compare the cost of a commercial lease to the cost of sending your employees a standing desk, an air-on chair, maybe even a ring light. If you're not familiar with the ring light, it's what it sounds like. It's a ring of light, and it's used it can hold a camera behind it, and it's used for evenly illuminating your face on video camera. If you've ever seen a video of maybe some teenage girls doing makeup videos, this is how they do it. If you don't have natural light coming at you, ring light's a really easy way to go. But I would push this even further and say that you could look at an Oculus Quest, for example. Now, this sounds really a little bit strange, but I want you to take this seriously. I was on a web conference last week where someone said Zoom is the future. And I kept my mouth zipped, but Zoom is the present. Zoom is not the future. I would argue that something closer to VR may actually be around the corner. $400 now for an Oculus Quest. Times 10, maybe if you have 10 team members, $4,000. Couple $100 for custom avatar customization, $300 for a VR home or community world, and maybe $100 for crypto art to decorate that space. And you're still coming in well under the cost of a commercial lease. That technology has come an extremely long way in just the last 24 months. And that might actually be something that you might surprise yourself with if you've never tried it. I haven't seen it used widely yet, but that could actually be the future. So keep an open mind about it. The bottom line here is that a typical employer, and this is a national stat, but a typical employer can save about 11 grand per year for every person that works remotely half the time. And employees themselves can save between $2,500 and $4,000 a year working remotely half the time, and even more if they're able to do to move to a less expensive area or work full time. Let's go to number 2. So before the COVID-19 crisis, informal communications have always been an important part of our corporate culture and performance. Now, I would argue that informal communications have to be planned. We all know how important this is. It enables friendships to form at work related to matters other than work. We all know from firsthand experience that people who have genuine friends at work, they're more likely to enjoy their job, they're more likely to perform at a high level, they're more likely to feel invested in your company and serve others within the organization. Now, our ability to remotely work well has been based on the already established strong relationships we have with each other and with our peers. And now when you get on a call or video conference with them, there's a history, right, that allows us to be more effective in our communication. But an increasingly remote workforce means we now have to plan these informal communications. We can't expect it to happen naturally. So here's some examples. And as homework, I would throw up some blank bullet points here and ask you to fill in the blanks and share with the group. But some of the things we've seen our clients doing are daily all hands calls that end with small group breakouts afterwards to talk about non-work related topics. We've had clients schedule one-on-one coffee chats up and down the organization and horizontally as well. One client we have has an online talent show with prizes. Senior executives, I think this is an excellent practice, host an Ask Me Anything. Now, these questions can be about work. They can be about something funny that enables a more personal connection. The goal here is not just staying connected, but actually feeling connected. That's what's going to create the tighter bonds and the higher performance that we become accustomed to until the COVID-19 crisis. So number 3, hone your messaging. You really have an opportunity now to show who you are. So tell your story. Externally, your salespeople must send consistent messages, not ad hoc responses. Don't leave this aspect of crisis management to emails about your quote unquote commitment to customers, or telling salespeople to, quote, stay focused and just take care of customers, quote. Okay, now that's an invitation for fragmented responses, multiple promises, and longer term costs to your brand and strategy. As managers, you have to manage. In an extended disruption, it may even be in your long-term interest to find supply alternatives for a customer. There's going to be few quota-carrying salespeople that can do that. And you have to deliver your new business challenges to the marketplace via your branding. So really work on proactively communicating about the measures you've implemented that may not be visible to customers in back offices, production or storage sites. And this could be end-to-end processes, minimizing human handling. It could be testing procedures across the entire supply chain, traceability of components, or just strict application of very high sanitary standards in your infrastructure or in your supply chain. Don't be embarrassed to say that you are doing better now than before. Really take advantage of market share as competitors fold. Internally, be transparent about your challenges. Regularly keep your teams up to date on the state of your organization, as well as the priorities and principles that should guide decisions at all levels, because those decisions have to be more decentralized. So plan to sustain this higher level of transparency and information sharing with more frequent, direct, and frank personal communications. Again, that planning of that communication. I will warn you that increased transparency isn't always easy. You may feel your actions are under a microscope, and I guarantee you not all employees will be pleased with the decisions you're making. But ultimately, what we've seen from our clients is that most employees will adopt a feeling of we are all in this battle together and fighting the same enemy. So number 4, seek exceptional talent. Now, that's always been a rule, but the strategy here has shifted. Many companies, of course, are laying off workers and downsizing. Some sectors are collapsing entirely. And it seems like an unprecedented number of people around the world, from new graduates to seasoned veterans, are now looking for employment. So I would encourage you to ask your fellow business leaders for the names of 3 to 5 great people that they would have liked to have hired over the past few years, and then go ahead and reach out to them. It's possible that many will now be open to considering an offer because their circumstances have changed. And keep in mind that we talk about work from home, but that really is actually work from anywhere. So don't limit your search to the local market or even the domestic job market. Leaders we engage with are realizing that their employees can be productive working from home. And now what we all have access to is a much larger talent pool from less expensive parts of the country. Interview and check your references remotely with the same rigor that you would in person. Automate and track your recruiting in a SaaS application, software as a service. There's many good tools out there for sourcing, tracking, screening, and so on. These are sometimes standalone tools. Sometimes they are part or a plug-in to a larger platform like Salesforce.com. If you haven't already refreshed and cleansed your online job postings online, please do it. Not only are new postings going to get the most tractions, but even ones that you posted a month ago are going to be viewed as potentially not relevant anymore because the situation with the economy is changing so quickly. So again, the goal is go 100% remote. Attract, screen, recruit all hires remotely. Many of you may know Ken Schmidt. He runs the local Sales and Marketing Leadership Alliance. He runs Turning Point Executive Search. He just last month placed a new CEO of a $10 million electronics company. The parent company is a private equity firm that conducted the hiring entirely remotely. So this is absolutely going on. Your competitors are going to start doing this. So So take advantage of this when you can. It's keeping on the HR business process theme. Once, of course, you get that exceptional talent, you have to keep them. This too is posing new challenges. Your competitors are also going to be seeking that exceptional talent. We've seen C-level leaders with a little more time on their hands because of reduced travel and better communication tools. And the more effective ones have become more involved as teachers and change managers within their organization. And they've become actively engaged in developing talent and ensuring organizational realignment. So I would also encourage you to rethink about how you evaluate employee performance. The pandemic presents really a unique opportunity to observe how your senior and mid-level managers respond to new challenges. As business leaders yourselves, I would encourage you to delegate routine work to teams in order to refocus your own efforts on bigger picture thinking. But this also gives you the ability to see which employees busy themselves with routine work and which can step up and develop broader leadership competencies. One thing that I would both recommend and caution about you two is using objective metrics on employee performance. Managing by objective metrics such as the number of sales calls made, customer service calls attended, hours logged on, tickets closed. These can be very useful to assess staff workload and performance. However, the quest for daily objective measures risks overemphasizing short-term results. Really the high levels, again, of uncertainty and change dictate that as managers, we need to operate a little more agilely. So make sure your goals have some flexibility built into them rather than short-term fixed targets. Trust employees to make decisions. Our world is still in flux, and it will be impossible to control everything that your employees do. So give them as much discretion as time and circumstance allows. Welcome questions, and then allow them to do their jobs. Let employees know you trust them. It'll help you get through this and will carry over when the crisis subsides. Recognition of outstanding or exemplary performance still matters. I make it a point weekly to share at least one story of something outstanding that's one of my employees has done every week. And then finally, there's remote perks. Some of you offer perks in office. Don't forget that you can do this remotely. So reward an employee by having lunch delivered or having their car washed. These days, even an Instacart gift card is welcome. So number 6 out of 8, and the final one I'll spend on the sort of the HR business process. Really get more efficient at onboarding and training your people. This is a terrific time to refocus on what onboarding, how onboarding is valuable. It requires new skills, requires new capabilities and new processes. As you know, companies struggle to onboard employees well, even when times are good and relatively predictable. All of us have probably had a job where we were just handed an employee manual and said, there's your desk, go do your job. The only way to fast track onboarding and enable these workers, these new employees to reach peak performance as soon as possible is to be very deliberate in developing a remote onboarding strategy and really literally dedicate twice as much effort and time to executing that strategy. And this goes beyond logistical issues like equipment or access to company systems. Hiring managers should provide remote sessions to replace orientations or mandatory sessions on training. As soon as the employee begins, the hiring manager or you should provide a list of all the key people the employee should connect with in the early days on the job, including direct reports, a mentor, key peers, and representatives from other functions. The hiring manager should see to it that video conferencing meetings with all of these people are scheduled early on. It's your job as leaders to make expectations and goals crystal clear. Be transparent about expected working hours, despite time zones differences of new hires, especially if you're hiring out of market. You need to explain how organizational culture manifests itself, and sharing milestone targets about what job success looks like at 3 months and 6 months. Some remote first companies give their new hires a heads up so they may be bombarded, that they might be bombarded by social media follower requests, for example, since it's become common for employees to connect with one another on social media in order to get to know each other more quickly in the absence of traditional FaceTime in the office. So really spend some time with this. And finally, and I can't emphasize this enough, you need to make over-communication a way of life, particularly if your remote employees are spread across different time zones. A bigger portion of your company's internal communications is going to be asynchronous. And that could be with employees reading email, chat messages, Slack updates, anywhere from minutes to hours after they were originally sent. So over-communicate to amplify that effectiveness of the asynchronous communication. Be really clear about your needs. Consider capturing screenshots, creating short videos when big time zone differences diminish the ability to connect in real time. Now, you knew I was going to get to this one, but the topics I've been reviewing so far, so remote work, communications, marketing, HR, these are all examples of processes that can be moved to the cloud. Most companies heading into the crisis already had a digital transformation agenda. Too often it was a collection of subscale pilot projects with insufficient top-down alignment and business leadership, especially sort of in your mid-size level business. And a lot of times these were not sufficiently linked to business objectives, but now is the time to rethink this and really raise your aspirations. Many of you already have been using web-based email like Gmail or Office 365 for years. I would encourage you to imagine what if your entire business was just as accessible, anytime, anywhere, by any of your employees. That's what the cloud can offer. And again, almost any business process can be automated in the cloud. Growing use of the cloud was already a driving shift from CapEx to OpEx spending, but this crisis really did put the pedal to the metal. And you need to do this before your competitors do. As someone that is in this business, we have had an absolute fire hose of work from forward-thinking companies that are taking this opportunity of the pause in their business to start to scale in the cloud where they didn't have the time to really focus on that before. So how do you do this? It has to be a business process first discussion. Just lay the technology aside, draw up a business-led roadmap to accelerate that digital transformation. Do it urgently, and we can help. So really rethink the portfolio of IT projects and technology spending. If you have a CIO or CTO, they really need to reprioritize their technology programs, projects, and purchases accordingly in order to meet a dual objective. Namely, they need to contribute to a reduction in the company's operating costs during this crisis until things settle. But at the same time, they need to absorb new technological investments, needed to restart or further scale or outpace your competitors. Okay, finally, I would encourage you to collaborate differently. And I've touched on this a little bit before, but just like you need to formalize informal communication, formalize collaboration. Redefine your job responsibilities. Redefine your work processes to encourage collaboration across job functions. It's even possible to tie this to compensation. For example, I'll give you an example from our field where to encourage teams to sell or encourage technical support in a technical sale, typically you have a salesperson that has a commission. And I've seen some companies where you might have a technical wing person come along to help do a sale, and then they end up splitting the commission in some sort of some sort of something that's fair. One way you can encourage even greater collaboration is by increasing that total commission where collaboration happens. So perhaps that 100% commission goes to 150%, and that collaborator takes that extra 50%. So there's no loss to the salesperson that asks for that collaboration across job roles. That's just one example. There's others. I'd also encourage you to organize volunteer-led initiatives. And this could be internal and external to your business. So for example, we've seen clients that are executing very complex business model changes, but it's by gathering volunteers who want to be involved in that effort internally. It really enhances staff engagement levels. But you can also use these volunteer-led initiatives to support a more ambitious social impact agenda. This is something that your employees are going to feel good about. It's also something that's great to tell a story about to your customers and partners. It's actually a wonderful recruiting message as well. And then finally, let me just emphasize, you're not alone. There are all sorts of new ways of collaborating with external partners, customers, suppliers, regulators, and even some of your competitors. So talk to other CEOs, talk to business leaders, find out what they're doing. Form a monthly or bi-monthly group to circulate these ideas. We've seen clients even host expert guest speakers on Zoom of topics of interest to their clients for more customer engagements. These could be, I've listed some discussion points here. I'd welcome discussion around what you seem to be effective. But for example, what about my customers has changed in the past 5 months? What can I learn from it? What am I not currently offering you that would be of interest? How could I improve the customer experience? How do I make doing business easier for you? So that's the 8 points. I think at some point we'll be able to meet face to face. We'll be able to meet face to face again with our employees, our partners, and that will be awesome. I can't wait. But I think by that time, I expect we will discover that things we thought were impossible were just difficult and got easier the more we did them. Some businesses, of course, are going to return entirely to physically co-working with each other or with strangers. Some employers rather that have become trapped in the past will force people to go to offices. The illusion that the office was about work, I think those alone is going to be shattered forever. And companies that hold on to that legacy will be replaced by companies that embrace the nature of remote cloud-based organization. I'll leave you with one anecdote. On June 1st, commercial offices, businesses in Boston were authorized to reopen at 25% capacity. These offices took every measure for physical distancing, sanitation. They sanitized the offices, spaced out the desk, one-way hallways. They've really thought this out. 2 days later, the business press reported that basically almost nobody showed up at work. So I would just emphasize that regardless of your own personal beliefs of how this virus is going to change, what the impact is in the economy, that perceptions are really going to rule. And hopefully some of these guiding principles can help you adjust to meet those challenges, and you can all continue to thrive.
Great job. Round of applause. I think I've got the reaction there with the little claps. Okay, good. Thank you so much, Chuck, for an excellent presentation. I know we had a lot of discussion in the chat box. So let's pull out some questions from the chat. and I can help. I'll start
Does it
with
have to come from chat?
No, it doesn't, but I think that some of these are burning questions. Let me just ask
Go
this
for it.
last one from North County Auctions. How much does Salesforce cost? I know it depends, so
Yeah,
I'm sure.
it does. So we do not resell Salesforce licenses. I'd be happy to introduce you to a local account rep. Their licensing scales from very inexpensive, $25 a month, up to $100, $250 a month. It really depends on the feature set that you're looking for. And again, I would encourage you to make this less a technology-driven decision than a business decision. So if you'd like, I don't know actually your name, North County Auctions, if that's who you are, but happy to have an offline conversation about the kind of business processes that you would think about automating, and I can recommend sort of a right sizing level of engagement, and be happy to make that introduction for you.
Great. I want to insist all my employees take the implant into their heads.
I would be first in line for that.
No, you wouldn't.
You're a gamer, Chuck. I like that.
It looks like the other comments in the chat box, Chuck, were comments, not questions. So now's a good time for people to unmute and ask their questions. I see Reese.
Chuck, I have a question. You kind of talked for a second about the Oculus setup process, what an organization needs to make that come together as far as the design of I'm not even familiar with it that much. What were those resources that you mentioned? You talked about the design. There needed to be a design element that had.
No. It doesn't have to be, but there's all these businesses and ability now to augment a VR experience that didn't exist even 12 months ago really well. So there are commercial designers that can design you an avatar for VR. They can design an office environment in VR. They can even take a LiDAR-like camera into your actual office and do a scan into VR for you, so that your employees, when they engage in the Oculus, are actually in the virtual office. We haven't played around with this yet, but I would argue that this technology has accelerated very quickly. And that happened before the COVID-19 crisis. I think that there could be further pushes into it. I hesitate to do predictions this way. I just wanted to share some of the observations that I've seen with it.
This isn't, oh, I'll hold this for after everyone does their questions, I guess.
Yeah.
John Beethan.
Yeah. Chuck, first of all, excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I also had a couple different comments. I actually dropped in the chat an excellent interview with Sam Harris, Making Sense. It's an episode called The New Future of Work, and it's an interview with Matt Mullenweg from WordPress.
Oh, yeah.
Who from the get-go, people should listen to it. Basically his 1,200 plus contractors or employees have always worked remotely. And the takeaway on that one is that people are getting more done and working less and a whole lot happier. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up in discussion is that I know of another local branding marketing agency who are actually closing their office. They have a small staff, and that's saving about $30,000 a year. And then, but the other big thing is that for some of his more advanced employees and designers that are like making $130,000 a year, he's actually recruiting people from different parts of the country at half that cost. So the other thing I wanted to get from you is what do you see in terms of this distribution and money moving around in terms of employment? Because, hey, we can do it from anywhere.
Yeah, this is a critical point. We talk about, the media talks about work from home. It's really work from anywhere. If you're in the IT space, of course, you've known this for 2 decades. We've worked with remote teams from Eastern Europe and India and China and Russia and Israel for 2 decades. This is now affecting businesses outside of the IT space. And with the I'd say it's compounding right now with the exodus from major urban centers. Increasingly, people, as they learn the perks that many of us have known for years. I personally have not had I've either worked from home or had a commute about 5 minutes or less for the last 19 years. But so long ago, and I think a lot of you learned the productivity gains you can get from this. I think other people now have had a taste. Employees are going to demand it. Employers now, again, are going to have to offer it. It's not a nice to have. They're going to have to fit it into their corporate strategy. So this opens up a possibility of hiring maybe someone that you would have hired locally in San Diego who has now moved out to Yuma or Fresno or Logan, Utah, that you would have preferred to have in person, but they just live in a cheaper place now.
Yep.
I expect the other thing we're going to see is some traditionally thought of in-person jobs go 100% remote. I haven't seen this yet, but I fully expect we'll see it soon. Think about even a traditional business like a dental office. Every dental office has a billing and sort of accounts receivable person, right? Sitting at the front desk. They handle your records. They take your credit card on your way out. They make sure that you're signed up for your next appointment. There's zero reason why that can't be done remotely by somebody in India, for example. Have a monitor. There's 24/7 if you need it, access. That Zoom link is always on. There's a POS system sitting right there. You have an integrated, excellent electronic medical record system. That might make the business more profitable. It might make up the level of service, and it might make the customers of the dentist feel better because there's one fewer person in there. So again, haven't seen it, but I think even we need to think differently about what the possibilities of remote work are, both for the benefit of our employees and the comfort level of our customers.
Yeah, one short comment I am really happy about as a podcaster, and I can say congruently, I've perfected the remote audio quality of what I'm doing now, and it's absolutely undistinguishable from somebody being in my studio. And this is like, the technology is just like advancing across the board. I'm really happy about it. Thanks.
Yeah, you got it.
What I've seen in the, being in IT, we've helped a lot of businesses transition over to allowing for remote work from home or work from anywhere. A lot of them, especially over the last 2 months. And what I would caution against is there is a balance of cheap work versus quality of work and quality of the customer experience. So we have been advising a lot of our clients, not necessarily outsourcing overseas, but outsourcing out of state is a great idea. But as soon as you go overseas, then you start adding issues that may make the customer experience a little bit less than favorable. And that's still really big in business. So with that, but also getting an online ERP, online CRMs, all of that stuff is, if you guys aren't doing it right now, do it. It's a game changer. It makes, Chuck is absolutely correct. It's all the difference. It puts you ahead of your competitors so far.
Yeah, so this is not just about employees working remotely. It's about really making your business accessible from anywhere to anyone securely. So both sides of that equation.
So Chuck, this is fantastic. My brain goes in all directions from your thoughts. You're right. It's just 8 out of the hundreds, maybe thousands of things you can do. I have a comment in here. After the 9/11, when it happened 19 years ago, it changed my career. Career where I used to be a technologist and I used to go along with the sales calls to do demos and be in a position to answer technical questions. And then 9/11 put a stop to it because no longer travel for a couple of years. There's a moratorium on travel. And then I started educating the salespeople and started doing demos online, right? So we are seeing the similar change in here in a different way. It is here to stay. And there's no reason to fight it. Business as usual is not going to come back again. It is going to change. And the businesses that adopt to whatever your suggestions and other tech challenges are the ones going to remain successful going forward, right? So that is very important, and I really applaud in bringing this very apt points right on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chuck, I do have a question as to what do you think are the best ways for, it's one thing having your employees work from home. You're accustomed to them, you know how they work. But I know my company, we hit a very hard spot with tracking work and productivity. And I had to basically kind of redesign how I was using my ERP 100% to be able to afford to be able to get that kind of data. For service-based businesses, I found it to be a little bit hard, where I'm not giving out client or projects to all of my clients, or I mean, all of my employees. Usually they're kind of, we're kind of like a call center here doing help desk and managed services. So if you have any tools or any tips on how to manage that, that's super helpful. And then when I need to grow, that's my biggest concern that I have is I'm still not 100% comfortable with hiring someone remotely just because of security concerns for what my technicians have access to. And I haven't really found a solution to that yet.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you remind me of a number of my clients that it's a different business, but this is particularly endemic in the manufacturing sector, where they very successfully run their business off of an ERP and spreadsheets, but have the exact same issues around, for example, sales productivity, or how they're sourcing their people out for helping customers with the product. An ERP may be one part of the solution, but I would encourage you to rethink about how what you're doing repeatedly and what you're doing manually. And the proliferation of spreadsheets and email in an organization are two symptoms that I look for that are indicative that you're doing too much manually. It's meant to be funny, but it's actually serious. I tell my clients that one of the measurements that we use to our own success, to rank our own success, is by how many spreadsheets we retire. Because these are all things that can be moved onto a platform, like a Microsoft, like a Salesforce. And the more business processes that you move onto a single platform, the more systems you can retire and unsilo, you're moving more and more to that 360-degree view of your business. And that's a 360-degree view of your clients, of course. It's also a 360-degree view of your employee activity. And this is where you can really start to measure productivity. In a services business, which of course we're in, we have consultants that are 100% on the Salesforce platform, and we task them on various projects with different milestones and actions. There's due dates. It's all on one platform system that they log time against. And so we can immediately, in real time, look at their utilization rates, the rates that their gross margins, how they're spending their time and what they're spending their time on. So it makes it very easy for me to get that view of productivity. So hopefully that can give you some guidance. Focus on those things you're doing manually and repetitively, and maybe we can try to unsilo and automate some of that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. It looks like we've come to the end of our questions. We have just